Please be seated, colleagues. Well, good evening, colleagues. Welcome to the meeting of the Borough Council. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Thank you. Welcome to those members of the public in the public gallery and those watching from home. If any member of the public or press would like to record proceedings themselves, please do so from the public gallery without interfering with the business of today's meeting. If the fire alarm sounds, can those sitting in the public gallery exit through the doors behind them, and those sitting in the council chamber leave the room by the doors behind me and make your way to the front of the town hall. To limit disturbances, please ensure mobile phones and other electronic devices are switched off or are on silent during the meeting. Any member who wishes to speak on any of the agenda items should use the microphones available. Borough Council today will deal only with business that is set out in the summons. Finally, I would remind all members of the Council Procedure Rule 34. Any councillor who speaks will not accuse anyone, member, officer, or otherwise of improper motives or use offensive expressions or unparliamentary language, and must demonstrate compliance with the Council Proud values and the Member Code of Conduct at all times. Colleagues, I will not tolerate unacceptable behaviour, and so please consider this your first and final warning. I have received apologies from Councillor Ellison, Councillor Leask, Councillor Proudlock, Councillor Rachel Taylor, Councillor Curtis, Councillor McGowan, and Councillor Stonehouse. Are any members aware of any further apologies? Councillor Kennedy?
I just put in apologies for Councillor Kenneth Woods. He's had to go to work.
Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. The first item of business
Madam
is...
Mayor, can I just bring a point of information up, please? Just a quick point of information, please.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, considering that this is the last meeting before the 16th of March, with this chambers and yourself, please wish all the Newcastle fans travelling to Wembley all the luck in the world in Newcastle United for winning that cup and bringing it back home, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'm sure we do.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The first item of business is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to make a declaration before we move on to the next item of business? Colleagues are reminded that if you have a disclosable pecuniary interest in an item which prevents you from participating in the debate and any vote, you will need to leave the chamber during that item. The next item of business is the... Oh, right. Oh.
Yeah. I'm here, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I would like to declare my disclosable pecuniary interest as Director and Chairman of South Tyneside Homes Board in respect of the draft budget recommendations. The company is in the process of strike-off, but as there is a reference to the housing revenue account, the housing accommodation, I want to make the declaration I have been granted a dispensation by standards committee on the 20th of March 2023, which allows me to stay in the meeting of council, participate in discussions and participate in any vote taken on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Keegan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I would like to declare my disclosable pecuniary interest, excuse me, as representative and member of the Tyne and Wear Fire and Rescue Authority in respect to the draft budget recommendations as the MTFP has been prepared using the precept figures approved by the Tyne Wear Fire and Civil Defence Authority. I have been granted a dispensation by Standards Committee on 5th of December 2022, which allows me to stay in this meeting of Council, participate in the discussions and participate in any vote taken on this matter. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest in the Tyne Wear Fire and Rescue Service, a non-pecuniary interest in the Northumbria Police and Crime Panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all declarations? Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 23rd of January 2025. Are they accepted as a correct record? Agreed, Councillor Dawes?
I think it's called a point of clarification, probably a typo, but on page 1, on declarations of interest, it refers that Councillor Dawes declared a personal interest in item 6. However, it then goes on to say she remained in in the meeting during. I'd just like to point out that I would class myself as a male.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll note that correction, Councillor. Thank you. Is that all? Yeah. The next item of are the minutes accepted as a true record? Is that agreed? Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is Mayor's announcements and communications, and it is quite a sad Mayor's communications this evening. Colleagues, I would like to take this opportunity for us all to pay our respects because of the sad passing of former councillors Jerry Graham, Donald Wood and Wallace Hobson. Jerry represented the Marsden Ward 1973-78, Recondike and Victoria 1980-82, Recondike 1982 to 1990, and Beaton and Bents from 1992 to 1996. Donald represented the Clevedon and East Borden Ward from 2003 to 2011. Wallace represented the Horsley Hill Ward from 2002 to 2004. Colleagues, can I ask you just to stand for 1 minute silence? Thank you, colleagues. Our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends at this sad time, and I'm sure that the council will now pass on our sincere condolences to the families concerned. So thank you so much. The next item of business is to consider a report of the Director of Business and Resources on the medium-term financial plan 2025 to 2030 draft recommendations. This is a significant decision, and I want members to be clear about how I will conduct the debate. The Constitution requires that anyone wishing to move an amendment to budget recommendations must provide written notice to the monitoring officer not later than 4 p.m. 2 days before the meeting, in line with Council Procedure Rule 12. Such notice has been delivered by Councillor Thompson on behalf of the South Tyneside Alliance Group. Therefore, as per Council Procedure Rule 12, this is the only amendment to the recommended budget that can be considered today, and there can be no further amendments moved at the meeting today except for procedural motions. I will ask Councillor Jane Carter, Deputy Leader and Lead Member for Governance, Finance and Corporate Services, to move the report and with it her recommendations. As the councillor submitting the council's draft budget for approval, Councillor Carter is entitled to speak for up to 40 minutes uninterrupted if she so wishes. After Councillor Carter's speech, the motion must be seconded. The seconder may speak for up to 3 minutes or reserve the right to speak later. I will then open the debate on the recommendations. The leader of the South Tyneside Alliance Group, Councillor Kennedy, is entitled to speak for a period of up to 20 minutes uninterrupted in reply and to move his group's amendment. After Councillor Kennedy's speech, the amendment must be seconded. The seconder may speak for up to 3 minutes or reserve the right to speak later. I will then open up the debate on the amendment. Councillor Kennedy, as the mover of the amendment, has a right to reply at the end of the debate on the amendment before the amendment is put to the vote. Councillor Carter, as the mover of the original recommendation, has a right to reply at the end of the debate. There will be an opportunity for any member to ask questions or speak for up to 3 minutes on the proposed budget recommendations and on the amendment, should they so wish to do so. Only Councillor Carter and Councillor Kennedy have a right to reply. All other members may speak only once on the main issue and only once on the amendment. So please bear this in mind, colleagues. I cannot tolerate interruptions, irrelevant or repetitive speeches, or unbecoming language or offensive remarks. As is custom and practice, I will allow the Leader of the Council to close the debate before it is put to the vote. I will now ask Councillor Carter to formally move the report and her recommendations. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, colleagues. Targeting support to make things fairer is at the heart of this budget. Setting the budget is one of the most important but challenging pieces of work that we have to do as elected members, and one which we have to discharge responsibly. How we allocate our resources has a major impact upon achieving our key objectives, and the external environment means it has never been more difficult. I am grateful to my fellow Cabinet members who have worked tirelessly to prepare this budget amidst very challenging circumstances. One thing we all crave for is certainty, and there is not much of that around at the moment. World events such as the turmoil in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine, and potential global trade wars have a real impact upon the UK economy through inflation, interest rates, business confidence, and the possible redirection of resources towards higher defence spending. Let's face it, nobody knows what will happen in the future in these uncertain times. This impacts the government's overall and projected fiscal position, and therefore ultimately some of the funding available to councils such as South Tyneside. The Chancellor's budget last autumn signalled spending priorities for the coming year only, although longer term we will have to wait until the spending review is concluded in the spring to understand the longer term horizon. There is a clear government commitment to overhaul the local government funding system so that spending more closely follows need, and this principle was strengthened in the local authority financial settlement for 25-26 announced just before Christmas. Some new funding streams, such as the recovery grant, which was heavily weighted to authorities with high deprivation levels, provided a welcome boost to partly meet the ever-rising costs of children's services. The finance settlement provided a bridge towards an intended multi-year settlement from 26-27 onwards that will support longer-term financial planning and transformation, but will also introduce changes to the formulae used to distribute government funding. I'm pleased to say that the consultation around the new funding formula is signalling a positive direction of travel for councils with lower council tax bases such as South Tyneside, and we will continue to lobby and engage with stakeholders and government, as we have always done, to secure the most favourable outcome for the borough from the review process. However, any change to the funding formula may provide a bigger slice of the cake, but will not grow the cake. Local government funding remains highly constrained, with many councils now seeking exceptional financial support from government, which may also be accompanied by intervention. If government funding since 2010 had kept pace with inflation in South Tyneside, we would have an extra £100 million plus to spend annually within our budget, rather than the 40% real terms cut that we have faced. Increases in the national living wage and additional employer national insurance contributions mean that we must spend more money each year to maintain existing levels of service, but also deliver ongoing savings and efficiencies with a reduced reliance upon using council reserves. We are continuing to have to make some difficult decisions to ensure we deliver for the residents of South Tyneside, whilst ensuring longer-term financial sustainability. This will involve some further reduction in post numbers, which will largely be managed through natural turnover. The financial plan continues to align our resources with the 20-year vision and 3-year strategic plan, which is set around our 5 core ambitions, one of which is to target support to make things fairer. These ambitions are the result of significant engagement with residents, partners, businesses and staff. This shift towards greater alignment between priorities and resources will continue over the medium and long term, underpinning our vision for the borough to be a place where people live happy, healthy and fulfilled lives. There continues to be a difficult backdrop of very high costs to support some of our young people who have significant mental and physical needs. This requires considerable investment into children's services in common with most other authorities. Due to these cost pressures, which will create an in-year overspend in 2024-25, an additional £4.5 million extra investment is planned to be added to our revenue budget for children's services. We are also continuing to invest through our capital programme to expand the accommodation available in Borough to support our young people with the highest needs. Accommodation in Sefton Avenue is nearing completion, with new facilities in Jarrow and Hebburn complete in the autumn. As well as offering better value for money, it also allows our young people to stay closer to their home and networks, which improves outcomes. In addition, our range of family hubs continue to deliver vital early help support to families and avoids crisis before it hits. This ongoing investment will allow us to positively build upon the fantastic improvement work undertaken by the service and recognised through independent Ofsted monitoring visits. Another key cost pressure is home to school transport, which costs around £6 million per annum. The budget continues with reform in this area to deliver this service more cost effectively, working with parents and schools. We are also introducing some means-tested charging for post-16 travel, which brings us in line with other authorities and supports our young people in their independence as they transition to adulthood. The proposals around adult social care continue the drive to keep people as independent for as long as possible. We know we can't do this alone, and so are working closely with health partners on a multi-year project to support more effective health and care pathways that help to preserve independence and delay more expensive residential care. We are investing in adult social care accommodation, which I'm pleased to report are nearing completion. These include Hedgley Road, Hebburn, Concord Way, Jarrow and Hebburn Newtown. These properties will help people live independently in the community and will help to reduce costs. At the same time, we are aligning our charges policy for social care to those of other authorities so that we can continue to provide support to make things fairer. Residents on the lowest incomes will be unaffected by this change, on which we are currently consulting. Due to the ageing population and to maintain a viable residential and home care market, there is additional investment into the adult social care budget. This includes expanding the local area coordinator scheme so that more investment is targeted toward prevention and working with partners to provide an enhanced accommodation and support offer. This is a budget which requires tough decisions, and I can assure members and residents that all options have been considered when coming to these decisions. One of these is the planned increase in school meal charges to £2.50, which still remains substantially below the charges levied by other authorities and is the first increase in 6 years. We have and will continue to subsidise the cost of these meals for the 55% of pupils who are required to pay the charge. As part of our anti-poverty strategy, we will look to continue to support schools with some financial help for those households that are just above the free school meal income threshold. One of our strategic ambitions is to support residents to be connected to jobs. This requires a supply of thriving businesses within South Tyneside. Building upon the success of the International Advanced Manufacturing Park, the regeneration of Holborn Riverside incorporates new housing, but also the capability for commercial development. It will provide great opportunities for private sector businesses and employment creation. The relocation of Tyne Coast College into South Shields Town Centre, which is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, will provide a massive boost in footfall to support existing businesses in the town centre. Valuable external funding, which is expected for both Hebburn and Jarrow Town Centre, will allow us to support local economies and communities right across the borough. Our capital programme will continue to invest in areas important to our residents while maintaining affordable and sustainable debt levels. This includes, for example, our highways. There is never sufficient funding to do everything we'd like to do in this area due to the sustained cuts in funding from the previous government. But we have allocated funds beyond those received externally, recognising that investment as a high priority. We remain committed to maintaining high quality, affordable housing and increasing its supply with a planned annual capital investment of almost £30 million. In response to new regulatory requirements, we brought the management of our housing stock back into the council in 2024, which were previously managed by the wholly owned company South Tyneside Homes. South Tyneside Homes and its staff did a wonderful job, but we needed the management of this service to be closer. There continues to be challenges in maintaining the stock to its existing high standard, and in particular responding to any issues related to damp and mould, which have a significantly higher profile across the whole housing sector following the tragic death of Awab Aishik in Rochdale. Consequently, our proposals around the housing revenue account include additional resources in this area, supported by a modest increase in rents. The average rent payable by a South Tyneside resident for a council property will still be less than neighbouring authorities. In respect of climate change, we will build upon the success of our award-winning energy schemes and are leveraging external investment to enhance electric vehicle infrastructure across the borough. The delivery of the Stronger Shores project with nature-based solutions will continue to help protect against coastal erosion and flooding. Our sustainable South Tyneside strategy will be refreshed, building upon the climate change summit planned for the spring, so that we can move further in the decarbonisation of our buildings, fleet and street lighting. Part of our ongoing transformation journey is to become a modern, fit-for-purpose council. We are harnessing the power of technology to enhance the productivity of our employees, provide comfort, choice and inclusion to our residents in how they access our services, reducing carbon emissions by cutting out unnecessary travel and printing, as well as using the power of data to provide valuable evidence to help guide decision-making. The ongoing investment in new technology will continue into next year for the benefit of all. The council, as with most authorities, has become more dependent on council tax income as government funding has reduced in real terms. Consequently, we are proposing for 25-26 an increase of 2.95% in council tax with an additional 2% adult social care levy. This levy is the part of council tax that can only be spent on adult social care services. This increase equates to an increase of £1.22 per week for an average Band A household, of which the majority of homes in South Tyneside fall. As well as this, the council has maintained for 25-26 its council tax support scheme, which provides enhanced support for those on the lowest income, which is over 10,000 working age households, to meet the costs of council tax. We are still living in very difficult fiscal times for many reasons, one of which is that inflation rates are not coming down as quickly as expected. This proposed budget has not been easy to prepare, and future budgets will continue to be difficult as the government's spending review is unlikely to deliver additional resources to the local government sector over the next few years. However, I believe these proposals have struck the right balance between investment in key services which continue to support the most vulnerable in our society, securing our future financial sustainability, and applying necessary trade-offs where some residents will be required to pay a little bit more. I commend this budget to the council. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Carter.
Thank you.
Is that seconded? Thank you. The seconder may speak now for 3 minutes, or would you like to reserve your right?
Reserve the right.
Right, okay, Councillor Foreman. Now, colleagues, we move to the debate on the motion. Do any members wish to ask a question or speak on the report and the recommendations presented by Councillor Carter?
The amendment.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll speak on the motion. It seems just 5 minutes ago, we were in this chamber proposing raising council tax in order to balance the books. I feel these books aren't balanced, and we're back here again, burning our candle at both ends in a desperate bid to keep this council running. This budget not only is asking the cash-strapped public to give more via another tax hike, it's cutting public services yet again through not replacing staff who leave or retire. Ultimately, this is just another form of cutting and weakening our frontline services. These services can't cope as it is. You've probably all noticed the rise of litter on your streets or your roads crumbling. Maybe you've noticed the weeds or the parks not being upkept. I thought this Labour government promised the public things would be different when they got into power, that local government would be funded properly. Instead, what do we face? Another lie and more excuses about a previous government and some spin about a black hole. I think the people of South Tyneside are getting tired being squeezed. The cost of living is up and they're now paying energy bills at the very highest in Europe. The budget is just another tourist on an overloaded beach donkey. And I feel that's exactly how the Labour administration is treating its residents and the government, the public. This council is falling deeper and deeper into debt and has borrowed substantially more. The council now in debt to the tune of £800 million. It's faced some tough challenges, no doubt, but a lot of these could have been avoided. Ofsted and Children's Services, for example, and the bin strikes. We cannot continue down this road. What we are doing is unsustainable. Things need to change. We can't just keep plodding up and down the beach, expecting the people to carry the weight of this council and government's failures. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make a few comments about adult social care. I know it takes up an enormous amount of the budget, but I don't feel that we're getting face value for what it says in the document. There's increases in the money that people are being asked to contribute up to £100 a week, people who require the services for adult social care. And it says that we need to have a wraparound service where they'll be safe and secure in their own homes. But unfortunately, that's not the case at the moment. We are finding more and more residents in that situation who aren't getting the facilities that they need to keep them safe and secure in their own homes, yet being asked to contribute more money to fill the black hole that we find ourselves in. And I just find it strange that they're asking for this amount of money and that they're saying that all these services that they're giving to adult social care, and I find that's not the case. The cost of somebody being in a care home is equal to the cost for somebody to live in their own home for the care that they need, the wraparound service that they need in their home. I just thought I'd like to mention that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To make a parallel, there are people well versed in ecological terms in this room, far better versed than I am. But some of the reading I do at the moment with regards to what they call tipping points in an ecological sense cannot be fully predicted. And so there are changes within the world itself right now, which is putting the organism of the planet at deep risk. When you bring it home to what Councillor Hamilton's just said in terms of people and social care, and to try and at last remedy what should have been started at least 14 years ago, and it's just been passed from pillar to post. We know that people matter, and I'm sure in these difficult times, everybody still is, and the authority wedded to efficiency and effectiveness. But I do think that there are limits to what can be done, and it's a perfect storm at the moment. I'm not being alarmist, but even some of the better press this morning talking about, you know, America might not back us to the point of attacking us in the future. And it's a bit bizarre to contemplate that. And I'm not shroud waving, I'm not worried about war, but you know, we are having to spend on defence as well as all the other competing priorities. I just feel that where economies can be made, yes. A commitment to greater efficiency and effectiveness, yes. One of the things that I keep on championing, and he's not the flavour of the month, but he might be in America, and that's Bernie Sanders talking about a 4-day week, talking about not sackcloth and ashes, but having a greater approach to work, which I'm sure the authority had at the time of COVID and flexible work and work from home. But we need to be committed to that part of working efficiently where we can save on emissions, save on shoe leather, save on tyres and all the rest of it, but where we can with rigour, looking towards ever more efficient and effective work and a 4-day week minimum to start with. I think we should commit to that as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Davies.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I haven't had much time to make notes, so I'll just do my best. I don't like reading off paper. I like to go off the cuff, but I have to go off paper. Okay?
Yes.
Apologise about that. So the budget black hole, we've got 18.8 million financial gap in 25-26. There's 2.7 million taken from the reserves, and this is despite warnings from SIPVA, yeah, that this is a recipe for disaster, but we're still doing it. Yeah, we're going further and further into black hole. It's 13.1 million service cuts this is impacting on vulnerable residents, public services and the infrastructure. Yeah, but they make it sound good. So the budget's not balanced. It's a desperate attempt to paper over the cracks with short-term fixes. The social care is underfunded. 70% of the discretionary budget goes to social care, yet the council admits that the funding is still insufficient. Yeah. We're relying on 2% adult care precept, which is forcing taxpayers to cover what should be a national funding responsibility. Again, they're making it sound a good budget. There's no sustainable solution, just short-term sticking plasters over it. Why is the council knowingly underfunding the social care, and what happens when the demand rises further? Neglect. Yeah. The council tax bombshell at 4.95% increase this year, pushing the struggling families further. 20% rise by 2030, which is baked into the big master plan. The council tax is regressive. It's lower income households that pay a higher proportion of their income than the wealthier residents. Yeah. The debt crisis, the 746 million or whatever it is now, the council debt is 4 times the annual budget amount, yeah, which is £5,500 per resident, right? There's no proper stress test for the rising interest rates, which is a major risk. The massive borrowing without clear repayment terms, and all we're doing is sending an email to the Public Works Loan Board. That 10 million we owe you, give us 20 million, we're going to pay you that 10 million back. All we're doing is going in a bigger hole with more interest and more loans, and there's nobody policing it properly. Then the highways budget.
Councillor, you have 1 minute.
1 minute, thanks very much. Highways budget, the cut kicks in for 26-27, meaning potholes and road maintenance will get even worse. Yeah. Residents already complain about potholes. How bad will the roads be when this funding's cut in half? The fees and charges are hidden tax rises, 2 million from increased fees, hitting social care, school meals and leisure services. Business rates only bring in 400,000, yet the residents are paying 3.8 million council tax increases. This isn't just a tax rise, it's a stealth tax on those who rely on council services the most. And a couple of small little points, Madam. It's not a budget built on resilience, it's a desperate short-term fix.
Can you wind up, please, Councillor?
Yeah. The council tax and government funding is broken. Why is this administration demanding reforms from their bosses? And debt spiralling, how do we know that we can afford it? We can it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Davies.
I thought Councillor Jim might have a point of information. No. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Robertson, for those comments. I'll start my remarks with thinking about Treasury management. So in this budget, we are increasing borrowing by a very small amount, 0.8 million. And so what that means is that we are taking loans at a point where interest rates are falling. What we are also doing is taking the interest, the loans that we're carrying forward that we, again, yes, absolutely need to refinance that debt, but we are then taking a loan over the long term, 25, 50-year terms of a low interest rate. If we'd taken that loan out last year on a 50-year term, we'd be paying 6%. But we are being prudent about delivering on when that loan enters the long-term trajectory of paying it over the long term. What that's delivered last year, it's delivered some really strategic long-term improvements around, as we've heard, children's care in the borough. However, what I would like to point out is that on the pothole management, we lose the local control from Westminster, and that's now delegated to the Mayoral authority. And so we are now having to go cap in hand to the combined authority, who are only providing £2 million to us in this budget. In addition to that challenge of good road infrastructure, this budget, in the document provided, incorporates EV charging as part of active travel. You cannot charge an e-bike at a curbside charging. I don't quite know how that fits in, but what we are also then delivering is £5 million to upgrade NCN 14. We are not connecting people to their jobs if we improve a cycle lane. Okay, what we are not doing is then delivering that connectivity from our suburban homes to our jobs. I was looking at getting a new job from inner South Shields out to Hebburn, over Leam Lane. 10 minutes in
Councillor,
my
you
car.
have 1 minute.
10 minutes in my car. If I was to do that on the bus, it would be an hour. If I was to cycle it, it would be weaving around all through the streets and taking, 40 minutes. That connectivity we are not thinking about, and the highway code delivers that objective. And lastly, we do not have enough money. Absolutely. The long-term settlement that is coming down the line really needs to look at connecting us to our priorities, addressing poverty, having a big strategic work programme to address the inbuilt inequality that council tax has on areas like the Northeast. 50% of homes are in Band A.
Can you wind up, please, councillor?
Are the poorest in our community, their backs are balanced on those that elsewhere in the country have much more disposable income. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Point of information, councillor.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. On what you've just said there, councillor, I don't know how often or if you have ever sent the Section 151 officer an email asking him how much he said 800,000. I'm giving him a point of information on his 800,000. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you said 800,000. I regularly, over the last 5 years, I'll send an email to Section 151 officer and I'll say, how much have we borrowed in the last 12 months from the Public Works Loan Board? The last time I'd done it, it was £50 million in 12 months. Not 800,000, 50 million. I suggest you send the same email yourself.
Point of information.
Thank you, councillor.
That is the figure set out in this budget in the Treasury Management Plan. I can get the page.
Councillor Davies, can you sit, please? Thank you. Councillor Ginn.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Shall I start again? I appreciate that yet further cuts to the local purse by central government. Balancing the books is not an easy task, and that South Tyneside Council must have a budget. My particular concern is regarding the cut of 2.6 million to children's services. 600,000 are cuts to family hubs, which amounts to 25% reduction in funding. I do not have the information regarding the full details of where these cuts will be, nor what the alternatives may be. What I do know from experience is the long-term damage that is caused by cuts to family hubs and youth services to future outcomes and costs. As a council, we claim to support early interventions, which in turn should help our children live healthy and happy lives. When these basic needs are not met, our children will find it difficult to engage with education and reach their full potential. Based on this knowledge and experience, I believe that any cuts which negatively affect the lives of our children is short-sighted and cruel. As a party, we are not given the opportunity to discuss a different approach, nor engage with the decision-making process for this budget. And I therefore have insufficient information to fully analyse the suitability of the financial plan. I hope that in future there will be more consultation with all parties. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Barclay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In respect of the references to adult social care, as the lead member for adult social care, there are just some issues that I would like to make council aware of. Balancing the budget this year has been very challenging, as Councillor Carter has said. There has been some very difficult decisions to make. The demand on services from adult social care is significantly growing. We have had to be able to meet that need for the benefit of our residents. That means we have had to make difficult decisions. In respect of introducing charges, can I just explain that in the last 8 years, we have been subsidising adult social care in terms of our clients. We all now are at a point where we have to look at sustainability and the demanding requirements there are for additional resources. Those affected by the changes will be able to access advocacy services to help them through the process. No one will be below the minimum income guarantee plus 25%, and no one who needs services will be denied them. We are committed to treating everyone in as fair and equitable a manner as we can, in order that we can deliver for an ever-growing demand. I hope that we recognise the needs that we have within our borough for the continued support of adult social care for those most vulnerable. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Can I? Yes, certainly, Councillor.
With respect to what you've been saying, I was at a meeting just last week about all of this, and the care that we're not getting the care now that the elderly people deserve and what they should have. They're being denied the aids now before even this budget comes in to make them safe and secure in their own homes. And some people are now being asked to pay up to £100 a week. And yes, they're being left with the minimum amount of what is expected them to live on, but nobody's taken into account the fact that many people have lost their winter fuel allowance. When you're in this situation and you need care, you're spending the majority of your time in your home. Therefore, your gas bills, your electric bills, all your bills go up. So it reduces and reduces that amount, and you still have to pay for the care, some of them up to £100 a week out of the money that they've got to get the care that they desperately need. Some of that care is only 30-minute visits. And when asked what a carer could do in that 30 minutes, well, when you go in, you can put the kettle on, and while the kettle's boiling, you can get her tights on. That's not the way to look after our elderly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Francis.
Madam Mayor, could you just have a point of clarification, please?
Yeah,
Just,
that has to be on what Councillor Hamilton's just.
no, I'm just wanting clarification as to when the amendment comes in. If this
It's
after this debate,
yes,
that's
I'll bring
obviously
you in then.
different to
Yes.
how we normally operate. Yeah. Thanks.
Is it what Councillor Hamilton said? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to come back to Councillor Hamilton there when she was bringing stuff up about adult social care. Yes, we are all struggling, and we know we're struggling. But when you've got adult social care and getting costs cut, and what Councillor Barkley just said there, it's fair for everybody. I can tell you now it's not fair. Not fair when we've got adult social services going into a pensioner's house and just put them under stress, aggravation, they're losing their thingy. And when you've got somebody, excuse me, Madam Mayor, can I ask you something? Nicola, your job is there to answer questions if and when required, not to keep shouting when people are talking. Thank you. So, Madam Mayor, what I was saying, but you're telling her talking when we're talking. Can you just be quiet when we're talking, please, instead of, because we know we're going to get pulled up about it. But Madam Mayor, I must apologise. But at the same time, when you've got, I've apologised. But when we've got adult social care going in to see residents, and their words are, why this is a council house, so why do we want to make these alterations for the sake of a few years when you've got pensioners in their 80s? That's basically saying we're not going to do this because hopefully you'll die in the next couple of years. That tells you everything about adult social care, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Point of information, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Francis.
Point of information, Madam Mayor.
No, you've already spoken, Councillor Davies.
A point of information.
Point of information.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Further to Councillor Roberts, we're balancing this budget on a consultation on reviewing the charges to these vulnerable residents. And that, for me, really feels that we're doing this budget process completely backwards, that we're asking to pass a budget without getting that public consent for the changes that we're going to be impacting them with. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to say how refreshing it was to hear a reference to Bernie Sanders, a presidential candidate that, well, just imagine how different things could be now if he hadn't been stitched up back in the day. And I'm going to be charitable to the group opposite, because I know they're in an impossible position trying to set this budget this year. This budget is being set against the continuing legacy of austerity. And despite the change in government last year, there's been little meaningful change in that regard. Austerity remains a political choice, and it's the most vulnerable who continue to pay the price. And once again, we're being asked to approve a budget that takes more from residents while providing less. South Tyneside is one of the most deprived boroughs in England. The services we provide are not luxuries, they are lifelines. But this budget undermines the council's own ambitions: financial security, health and well-being, employment, strong communities, and fairness. How can we claim to support residents when we're cutting the very services that help them most? And for many residents, the key question is simple: how much more will they have to pay? The answer: a 4.95% increase in council tax. And what are they getting for it? Fewer services, more uncertainty, a local authority forced to make impossible choices because of a broken funding system. They're paying more for less. And we heard Councillor Carter talk about the impact of austerity since 2010 and what it would look like if the funding for local government had kept pace with inflation. And that just made me think about what happens in a workplace where wages don't rise in line with inflation. You don't just accept that. You get together, you organise, you unionise, you demand better, and you get better because that's what's needed and that's what you deserve and that's what's right. Last year, I called for this council to demand fair funding, restoring proper, adequate funding for local government. And that motion was watered down with an amendment from the Labour group. But that call is even more urgent today. The people of South Tyneside deserve better than this budget. We need to be bold enough to stand up for the people we represent and tell central government that this simply isn't good enough. Now, I recognise that we need to have a budget agreed tonight to keep services going, the services that the residents rely on, the most vulnerable residents in our communities rely on. But I really struggle to support a plan that makes life harder for the very people we're supposed to be here to represent.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McHugh? Councillor McHugh?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just a couple of pointers that have been mentioned today. The school travel, which we're looking at, we're not going to be like any other borough. We are the only one that have been supporting this, and that is the only borough. What we're trying to do now is, instead of our young people just plunging into adulthood and not having taxis pick them up at the door, take them to the schools, obviously severe, it will happen, but we will be giving the price of South Tyneside, like a bus pass, like a student pass to the young people, so that when they do hit 18 or above, they'll actually know how to do it, because we'll be supporting them using public transport, which, I'm going to be honest, I look at it that you can't just have them stopped, but yeah, we're the only borough and we don't want to stop the full support. So that's how that's coming in. The milk rise, that's going up from £9 to 11, that's per term. But families who are eligible for free school meals, they will still get their free milk. So it's the families who, not all families opt into this. It's just certain ones in schools, it's optional if the family want their children to opt in and get the milk. And for the school meals themselves, we pay £4 out per meal per child in the borough. It's been a really difficult budget to try, because obviously we want to get the debt down, but you know, this is one of the ways that we are going to have to try and do it in children's services. And at the moment as well, I mean, North Tyneside Authority, they don't do school meals, full stop. Don't deliver school meals at all, any of that schools. And we've got we now have 10 schools in South Tyneside who are getting free breakfast meals.
1 minute.
Sorry, they're getting free breakfast meals from the government funding, which is trialled, so we'll hopefully continue. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor,
Councillor,
Madam Mayor, point of information on Councillor McHugh there. Point of information. Councillor McHugh there just mentioned about home to schools transport of the most vulnerable children that were coupled. I've been doing it for 28 years. She hasn't a clue what she's talking about. What they're wanting to do is have kids took in wheelchairs to a central point to be transferred into school.
Point of information, Madam Mayor, that's totally incorrect.
Well, what
Thank
did
you. Totally incorrect.
What did
And
you
you
just
should
say?
have declared interest, by the way, if that's
What-
your
no,
job.
well, I'm a subcontractor, so I shouldn't have. Right? No, I
councillors, please.
No. So she's totally out of order, totally wrong what she's
Okay.
saying.
Thank
She
you
doesn't
for
know what
your
she's talking about.
point of information.
Thank you, point of
Thank you.
information, but I do.
Thank you, councillors. Does anyone wish to speak before? Sorry, Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the report, Councillor Carter. I notice on page 98 that shows the council's operational CO2 emissions and the targets for their reduction, and that the reductions are way behind the target at the present time. So it's heartening to see that they're going to refresh the Sustainable South Tyneside strategy. Could I ask that that's done in conjunction with the cross-party working group, the climate change working group and the task and finish working group, so we can get a cross-party consensus on what needs to be done, so we can work together to try and get those emissions down.
Thank you, councillor.
Can I respond to that? Yes, that's correct. We will be working together to make a better South Tyneside, sustainable South Tyneside. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Foreman, would you like your 2 minutes as the seconder?
2 minutes, thanks. I mean,
Oh,
I've sat.
oh, sorry. You wish to speak, Councillor Gibson?
I just wanted to say a few words.
Oh, right, yes, I can put you.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to say that I will be supporting this. No, it was a point of information.
He hasn't spoken.
Was a question.
Yeah, no, he hasn't.
Madam Mayor, I
Yes.
just wanted to say
Senior
that I will be
councillor.
supporting this budget. This budget's been very difficult for everyone. Officers. have had
How's
to work-
how's this a point of information? It's not, Madam Mayor, he's waffling.
No, he is actually
Honest to
speaking.
God.
He had, Councillor Gibson had not spoken before. I have not got him on my list, so yes.
So, Madam Mayor, I'll
carry on,
continue.
councillor.
Thank you. I just wanted to show my support for this budget. It's a very difficult budget for everyone, even for councillors. Everybody involved. It's been hard for officers. It's been hard for the leadership to pull together. We've robbed Peter to pay Paul. As you know yourself in your own houses, austerity has hit you. You go for something what was £1 last year. It's 1.75 now. It's hitting everybody. From our roads, you talk about potholes. We're not getting the value for monies. We're dead. Sustainable South Tyneside, we're trying to invest in that as much as we can, but it's funding, resources and funding coming from government and central government. That's what we've been waiting for. A new government's coming in. Hopefully, in the near future, this will be resolved. But I've got to say, our frontline services are still working quite hard. We are still delivering frontline services what other authorities are not delivering. And we'll go the extra mile to do that. Our area management teams are working fantastically all year round. Our road sweepers, everybody is working as one team in South Tyneside to make the place a better place. And I'd like to say, but it's down to everybody, councillors supporting it, working together, committees coming together and looking at like the finances, how we can manage things better. Children and young people, it's about investment. I know we haven't got the money we used to, but things are costing more. So we've got to look at the best deal and the best way forward for our children and for the people of South Tyneside. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Foreman.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think everybody in the chamber understands how difficult putting a fair and balanced budget together is, and it doesn't matter what anybody says, there's still the pressure of the 14 years of Tories austerity. And you can bow your head and shake your head, but it is, if you're sitting on this side and you're sitting in a cabinet and you're having to make these decisions, it's the hardest thing in the world. But we've got to deliver a fair and balanced budget. And I agree with the Cabinet Member for Finance. This is a fair and balanced budget. And as soon as this fair and balanced budget is finished with, we start work on next year's budget. One of the things that really brings to mind for me is, as the housing cabinet member, is seeing some of the work that has been done, the likes of Hindmarsh. We've got the next one online is Lizard Lane. And then after that, it'll be Reynolds Avenue. We're still trying our best with very limited budgets. And one of the things that we'll have to do all the time when we're talking about building houses is go cap in hand to Homes England to get the budgets to do it. Well, we've been successful for Lizard Lane, but all it does is it adds pressure to the delivery of what we want for our residents. And we really want the best for our residents. But the only thing that's stopping me is that £100 million that we should have had from 2010 to today. And I'll tell you what it is. It would have been a totally different budget than what we have to have. And I'll reiterate again, we have to deliver a fair and balanced budget. And I would move this chair, I'd second this chair, Madam Mayor. This is a fair and balanced budget. So I second the mover.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Councillor Robertson?
Councillor Foreman's just said about having to prepare for next year's budget. You don't have to worry about next year's. You'll not be sitting on that side.
Councillor
Right?
Robertson?
No, that it's fact.
I'm sorry, Councillor Robertson, that is...
And see the 100 million that he mentioned.
Right. Councillor Robertson, point of information is to correct an alleged inaccuracy. You are not doing that, so can you please sit down?
He said he was doing the budget next year, Madam Mayor. He's not doing the budget next year. It's an inaccuracy.
Please sit down, Councillor.
The 100 million, can I talk about that, what he's just said?
Councillor Robertson, will you please sit? Thank you. It is not a point of information. Right. We now have finished the debate on the motion. No, I'm sorry. You've already spoken and you had not. I've closed that part of the debate. I'm sorry. Now, Councillor Kennedy, as leader of the South Tyneside Alliance Group, you are entitled to speak for a period of up to 20 minutes in reply and to move your amendment, Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A lot of things being said here. Start off with some of the things that I see as inaccuracies. We're talking about ifs and buts. Had governments been in line with what's gone on, would have 100 million extra. We wouldn't have had it. We may have had 100 million this year, but that would have been, a drip from 15 years ago when we started amassing the debts we've got. One of the big things I pulled out this budget that we seem to be in at least an 18 million black hole on the budget alone. The interest payments on that 800 million that were borrowed, 25 million. Now, if we had that alone, without the excessive borrowing on the field, things that have gone before with 365 and what have you, we'd have more money to play with. But that was wasted by councillors in this very room from back in the early 2000s when we started borrowing money on that. We talk about giving children a bus pass. We've now got a Labour mayor for the region
Now, she's just stripped 50 million away from Durham County Council for public transport. What is she going to strip away from here? Great, we'll give all the kids a bus pass to get them to school, but the bus isn't going to turn up or the service isn't going to run. So what they're going to do, stand at the end of the street and then have to ring a taxi anyway at the expense of the parents who they can little afford it. You know, we talk about building these affordable homes, these new places we've banged on and on about Hindmarch Drive. It's great, but we got rid of our best houses last year when we gave them away for a pittance. Over 400 houses we gave away to carbon homes on your watch. You know, it's all wrong. And what we're trying to do now is put a sticking plaster over a great big wound. And I know it's hard for you, but there's something else that's come out of that. And we've been called for not presenting an opposition budget. I've just said as soon as this one gets ratified, we're going to start work on the next one. We're lucky if we get 2 or 3 meetings with the 151 officer. Well, you've had all year to do this. You know, you've got the facts and figures in front of you. We've had nothing at all compared to what yous have had. We've had a fraction of it. The midterm financial plan was only agreed a couple of weeks ago. You can't even set a budget without that information. So everything yous are saying and everything yous are doing, it's all just to fluff over the main issues. You know, the fact that yous have failed for years and years. You haven't done what you should have done. You know, I said it this morning and I'll go back to it again, the lies that your government has told the people of this country to get into power. You know, the promised changes to council tax. And where are we? We're still putting it up by the maximum. There's your own Angela Rayner would have had that at 10% had she have given the choice. You know, and you talk about fixing the problem. I just don't get it. I really don't. We're trying to make excuses for yourselves, blaming past governments, and it just doesn't wash with me. So I appreciate we've got to have a budget, and it would be foolish not to go along with it to some extent. But I'd like to propose some minor changes to it to make it a bit more palatable to the people that we are letting down, and that's our residents. Now, you've all got a raft of amendments in front of you. There's 4 in total, and I'd like to talk through them. Now, the first amendment is develop and expand the existing business and community response teams. Now, we're proposing to do that by diverting CAF funding from the LNS funds, whereby each of the CAFs donates £5,000. That's, you know, we're going to achieve some money towards this. It would allow it to get another couple of members of staff in a possible vehicle. One of the biggest things that's causing us problems in this borough is antisocial behaviour. Alone, £100,000 to remove graffiti, and that was the figures as of October 24. Now, what better way to spend money on our neighbourhood on developing an effective ASB team and doing it from the LNS funds? We need to protect our residents. Antisocial behaviour is a legislative responsibility, and this has been ignored for too long, and it's only been brought back due to pressure from the independents. It's cost effective and it'll pay for itself in the long term. Stop the antisocial behaviour, the fly tipping, the graffiti, the petty crime, the criminal damage. We'll wipe out £100,000 straight away on graffiti removal. I know it's not going to fix itself overnight, but having another couple of wardens, the residents are seeing the benefits of that now down on the seafront, and to bring another couple of people into an established group, an established body within our council, has, you know, it just makes sense. The second amendment, we want to reduce the school meal charges. Now, even our amendment hasn't took away the reduction at all, but we're talking about putting £90,000 back into school meals. That's a commitment from the opposition to nurture the children of this borough, paid in part by a freeze in councillor allowances. Everybody thinks we get paid for nothing. Why should we be taking in more money when the very residents that we support are feeling the pinch? Your government stopped it, did nothing with the 2-child cap that they were going to do. They did nothing with the winter fuel allowance. All lies and spin to get into government. So we're proposing to give the people of this borough a little bit back. £90,000 now, it would equate to the rises in free school meals of about £19.50 per child per year. And it's money, the money that I save could be better spent in these hard times, heating, school uniforms, whatever. Your rises equate to £58.50 per child per year. Again, we can fund that by refusing to take our rises in allowances. That would make our residents feel a lot better in the job that we do. That's all. Yeah, there's also it's not entirely on our allowances, but that's the thing that'll cut it with our residents. There is also a funding from the vacancy management scheme. Now I know your budget quoted 45 posts. We're looking at raising that by 5 further posts, but we believe it's doable through natural wastage. We don't think anybody would have to lose the jobs. It's something that would come just through natural wastage, people retiring, what have you. Now, the third thing on there is an uplift in street cleaning. Now, what your budget, what you've failed to do in this meeting whilst we're on camera is you've failed to mention the cuts that's going on across the borough. And there's a lot of money being taken out of these services, a hell of a lot of money taken out of street cleaning. All we're asking is to reduce the amount you are going to take out by £50,000. It's still a bitter pill to swallow, but at the end of the day, it's better than what you're going to do. Again, that would be funded from the vacancy management scheme. Now, we've then got Amendment 4, reverse the proposed increase in free school milk. It's going to cost £40,000 to do that. It's a pittance compared to the money that we're actually cutting services by, and again, funded again by the management scheme. All of this is doable. It gives back to the residents in our borough who can little afford these things, because it's all good and well saying that these services are opted into by some families, but some families that are just outside of those boundaries that stop them getting it for free can't afford it anyway. And if we can give this back to them, it just makes it a bit of another better part of the bitter pill to swallow. Now, going back to something that Councillor Davies said about taking out loans whilst the interest rates are low, that's all good and well. But what happens when it goes up? Because we're still going to borrow. We're still going to rob Peter to pay Paul, because that's what we're doing now. The loans are coming to fruition and we're having to borrow money to pay them off. We're in that spiral now, caused by this council. We're not going to get out of that anytime soon. And it's all been on your watch. You can't blame successive governments. It started back in, there's been Labour governments in power when you have done exactly the same, and it's continued. Since Labour came in, they've broken promises. It is an impossible task, and it's a sticking plaster for a gaping wound. And we accept you need a budget, but all this budget's going to do is keep the lights on. It's all it's going to do. It's nothing long term. Shopping and inflation, it's gone up by 4.2%. The energy price cap is going up again. Starmer promised there would be no rise in council tax. All broken. Local debt's out of control. January 24, we're still in £800 million worth of debt. We've got the highest debt per head of any North East council at almost £4,800 per person per head. Durham's only at 800. That speaks volumes. We've let our guard down, and it's all down to you. And it's about time we started fixing this. We've inherited, if we get in next year, we'll inherit that black hole of £18 million from you, and we probably won't even be able to fix it. But it's probably better you are here for another year so that people can at least gear themselves up for that feeling when it comes. So, you know, and when we talk about the debt, it's detrimental to our borough, it's detrimental to our residents for years and years to come. Any Labour supporter looking at this budget today should be thoroughly ashamed at what this Labour government has turned out to be. Full of broken promises. We've got one of the most hated prime ministers ever. You know, he came in, he was going to do so much for us. And look where he is now. He's gone like that in the polls. Absolutely incredible. You're a party voted in on the hopes of better times who have turned out to be worse than what we've had in the previous government. I'm sorry, that is the bitter truth. So just to give something back to our residents, I'd really like you to consider accepting the amendments we've put on the table today, just in an effort to give something back to the poor suffering residents that have suffered for long enough under this Labour control. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor. Is your amendment seconded? Thank you, councillor. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right? Right, thank you. Can we now open debate now upon the amendment?
Excuse me, I have a point of information. In fact, I have two, please, for me.
Yes, councillor.
I suppose it's information and clarification. So in the paperwork, in the amendment that we have, it states that £5,000 to come out from each ward, over 18 wards from the LNS. But Councillor Kennedy said from each CAF, £5,000 from each CAF, but you've actually stated each ward. And furthermore, Madam Mayor, you also stated as well, and just to clarify, you said to reduce the school meal charges, that's what you were looking to do. So,
to reduce the rises that he is
I think that is clearer, because just to correct on that point of information is that the budget request is to increase school meals from £2.10 to £2.50, and the opposition amendment is to increase school meals from £2.10 to £2.40. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor, yeah.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kennedy, for presenting this. Right. Am I okay to speak? I don't know what's going on. Okay, I'll continue. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kennedy, for presenting this amendment. I do support this amendment in good faith to reduce the impact of the proposed budget on our borough's children, whilst increasing funds to our community response teams and street cleansing teams. I'm particularly glad to see a proposed freeze in the allowances we all receive as members of this council, instead diverting those funds towards the meals served to school children across the borough. I hope all members of this chamber can agree that with a parliament struggling for cash ahead of us, we should all see our limited funds go to feed future generations and not for those funds to end up in our pockets. I urge all members to seriously consider this amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Eloquently put by councillor. Yeah, I don't think I can better that at all, just to support the amendment. I think this will capture the imagination of people who are literally, if not on their knees, they're on their chin straps. And I think that imaginative approach in terms of how to fund other staff to be generative to then go back to help to enforce communities, because the problems like on a conveyor belt are not getting any easier. Coming down the coast road, there's been a lot of debate about the N1 cycle scheme. And so a piece of property being developed along that site, and the firm just dug a massive scrape through the rubble in from the back of Norfolk Road, I'm going to name it, and covered it over with greenbelt after all of what we've tried to do for the N1 cycle scheme. So these are the kind of things that are going on now in the borough, and it's a problem, and it's not going to get any better, it's going to get worse. So I think from what Councillor Graham said and what Councillor Years put eloquently across, this is generative, it's imaginative, it's a start, and it will focus attention across the borough of solution-focused approaches, however small and granular, to start and improve in that way. So I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to mention that point of information which I couldn't squeeze in. Councillor Foreman mentioned the 14 years of Tory austerity in relation to the debt level. Just the point of information would have been that predominantly our debt level was accrued under a Labour government.
Point of information, I noticed they always talk about the debt, but they never talk
Can I
about
finish
the
my words?
assets
Can I finish
that
my
this
words, please?
council owns.
Speaking then the point of information.
Thank you. So it wouldn't be responsible of me at all to not mention the debt level, but I think a few people have beat us to it today and how debilitating that 800 million of debt is. But really the key figure for me is the 25 million a year coming out of this council, which is causing massive reduction in our services. And we're seeing no end to that. So the amendments put forward by Councillor Kennedy, yes, they're modest, but this is a time when every penny counts, as Councillor Brown mentioned, and these are targeted, and because they're targeted, they're important. And I hope everybody can really consider this. I mean, what happened to the Labour Party when Starmer stood up and said, you can rip up your council tax, rip up your council tax bill, because you'll not pay a penny more than you paid last year under a Labour government. Not sure what happened there. Possibly Rachel from accounts made yet again another mistake. I don't know. But I know things are difficult. But overall, I think we have to break the spiral of less council services, less council workers, paying more council tax. We all understand how difficult that is. Nobody less than us in the opposition. But we've got to start somewhere. And for me to start to repair that damage, I can only see that with new blood, a fresh approach, a new political administration in our council. We've had Labour forever. And what have we seen for it?
Councillor, 1 minute.
Thank you. A mountain of debt and a ruling Labour group that has no plan, no imagination, and have lost the trust and the support of the people of South Tyneside. As has been mentioned a couple of times, and I'll steal the line again, we've got to keep the lights on here. I hope we can pass these amendments and hold our noses and support this budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Did you have a
Cheers.
point of information, Councillor Foreman?
Madam Mayor, they keep banging on about how much debt we've got, but one of the things that they don't ever say is the assets that we have in this borough far outweigh the debt.
Thank you, Councillor.
Point of information, please. Sorry.
Yep.
Can I do a point of information on what Councillor Foreman said, please? If you don't mind.
Yes, you can have a point of information, Councillor.
When you say about assets, Councillor Foreman, let's wind one next back to the 365 development. The elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. The £100 million in assets, right? We'll go out now, today, round King Street, and the bulldozers are there. 100 million on the 365 development that went flat on its face, right? And we're now, after buying properties, we're now paying for the same properties to be demolished because the crook, Ian Malcolm, creamed all the money away.
Councillor, please. Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What's being proposed in this amendment isn't a fix to the council's reliance on debt and all its problems. Had we been the ruling group and been allocated the resources and information, we would have proposed an entirely different budget. I think Councillor Kennedy's already pointed out. However, we don't have that luxury just yet. This amendment to the Labour budget doesn't take away from the fact it's going to be extremely painful for our residents to swallow. And it doesn't excuse the disaster that this Labour administration has gotten us into. What's being proposed is a limitation of that damage this budget will cause. It's aimed at protecting some of the most needy and vulnerable in our society, such as our children, as it helps with free school milk. We've all heard that saying, the milk snatcher. Well, this Labour budget does exactly that. It hits the children and raises the cost of milk. Our amendment helps offset that cost to school milk. It allows more freedoms for schools to offset the cost of school meals for those that are just above the threshold and gives more financial flexibility to intervene. This amendment helps reduce the pain on vital services that clean our streets by allocating them more money, which are underfunded, and helps mitigate the pain this budget will cause in our services. It also helps our ASB teams, which will be better funded. The cost of this service pays for itself, surely. And the ASB damage, it reduces. Please vote for this amendment tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carter.
Madam Mayor. Oops. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to clarify what this amendment is. And it is one amendment split into 4 proposals. It's not 4 amendments, it's 4 proposals in one amendment. So I would like you all to take that into consideration. Thank you. I hadn't realised as well that speaking to an amendment, you could bring up things about the previous discussion around the budget, but I will go through my responses to the actual, and I'll go through them as amendment as you've set out on the paper. Amendment 1. So basically you're talking about diverting £5,000 from each ward's CAF, so it's each ward's CAF, funding for local neighbourhood schemes in the first year. The local neighbourhood scheme plays an important part in supporting our local community groups and charities in funding local projects to develop and extend their activities and undertake small-scale, locally important improvements and projects which deliver at a local level. Our community rely on this funding and, if reduced, would impact greatly on our residents. Amendment 2, reducing the rise in school meals from £2.50 to £2.40 by freezing councils' allowances and £65,000 saving from the vacancy management scheme. We are continuing to support all families with the cost of living by heavily subsidising school meals, which Councillor Q has already outlined. The price has been frozen since 2018. We are supporting families through the cost of living crisis, as well as the costs we charge are below any of our neighbouring authorities. We also provide every school with £2,500 discretionary funding to support families who do not qualify for free school meals but may need additional support. Council's allowances will be reviewed next year by an independent body, so I'm not so sure that that would generate the saving needed. And with regard to the £65,000 saving made from the vacancy management scheme, I'm not sure how this equates to five posts, because you've actually mentioned those 5 posts in the other 3, or is it 2 amendments? 3, I think it is. The uplift in street cleaning by £50,000, again from the vacancy management scheme. And that is for, is it the same 5 posts or is it an additional 5 posts? It's the same 5 posts. I'm not so sure where you got your costings from about how much the vacancy would cost.
Do you have 1 minute?
Thank you. Amendment 4, I'm not so sure what is meant by subsidising milk costs as much as possible for primary children for a saving of £40,000. And actually that's from the vacancy management scheme as well. We are committed to minimising job losses wherever possible, ensure there is minimal impact on staffing. Without adequate staffing levels, we just won't be in a position to provide the quality services our residents deserve. The proposal to add a further 5 posts on the total will increase the risk of impacting upon service delivery. I won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kilgour.
Councillor Atkinson said he's got a point of information.
Is it on, right?
And that was discussed with finance. And you left out that, we're at the fringes here with 5 posts. I think you've reduced the vacancy management scheme by 45 posts.
Thank you, Councillor.
Can I raise a point of information, please, Lady Mayor? Point of information?
Yes, Councillor.
just like to come back on you that with Councillor Carter when you're going about the First Amendment, the LNS funding. Yes, it does provide vital services to our residents, but what we tend to find in our CAFs is that there's a lot of that money goes unspent and goes back in the mainstream spending anyway because it doesn't get uptaken by the majority of the residents. So it's, well, that might be so, but my experience is that it does. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a valid way to fund this without hitting the pockets of the people that really matter.
Thank you, Councillor.
Point of information, Madam Mayor. Point of information, Madam Mayor. That's his point of information. Yeah, it's just, sorry, Madam Mayor, it's just to see whether the funding, we don't spend our money on radiators. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kilgour, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I am a little concerned, in fact, very concerned that the same reason, and I won't call it an excuse, but the same reason year on year given is that the opposition, and I don't report that to be all, is that they don't have any access to information. I really can't understand how that is, given the numbers of FOIs that are put in, the information that is accrued from that vehicle alone, let alone access to the 151 officer or any other senior officer who can give that information. And I really struggle with the likelihood of an officer refusing to give information that is absolutely due to members, certainly all of us sitting around in this chamber. And I'm not sure whether there's been any Treasury management training taken up or anything of that nature with regards to improving financial acumen. What I would like to say is that I understand that this has been a significantly difficult budget to put through, and the pickup on the amendments have been matters of real emotion. There has been quite a lot of conversation and criticism around adult social care and council tax, yet no solution, no amendment, nothing offered. So they are statements without any solution that has been offered. And just to come back, I did, as soon as we got the requested amendments, I did check as to what the revenue receipts had been from the Business and Community Response Team in the last year. And the revenue that has been accrued, I'll read the answer. There have been no prosecutions or fines levied through the Community Response Team in the last year. And what deeply concerns me is that we are seeking to become dependent on a revenue that has never been realised in the last year. And I think that is risky. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor.
Well, the councillor has just said there about acquiring financial information, whether that's under an FOI. Let me tell you, I can give you scores and scores of FOI requests that's been made, requesting valid financial information, and it's vexatious. You get a members complaining against you, and this group have seen them. These are valid financial questions.
Councillor, I'm sorry, this isn't a point of information.
Well, it is, because you're saying the information's available.
Yes, it has to be an inaccuracy or a help.
Well, the councillor believes that we can get it under FOI.
I'm sorry, councillor, can you sit down because
not
this
a problem,
isn't correct.
Not a problem.
Madam Mayor, could I make a point of information on what she's just said, please?
Councillor Davies, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What I would say is two things. Overview and scrutiny saw a presentation on the medium-term financial plan. Good governance would be that they would see a draft budget before it goes to cabinet. So there is a window of perhaps 7 weeks as opposed to the 4 that we have on this year's timetable. In addition to that, for whatever reason, I mean this no slight on officers, I asked questions on the 7th of February. I received that reply back on Monday. And so as a result, I didn't have that information for 3 weeks to form what I was looking to say today. And the response to that was relatively swift and relatively easy to be made when the time came. But I had to continually go back to get that response. So under good governance, I would hope going forward into the future, both for the next year and for the full years to come, that overview and scrutiny sees draft budget proposals as early as possible. Leeds Council, for example, sets an MTFP in September. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Point of information, please, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Kilgour.
Thank you. I understand Councillor Davies' frustrations, and as a relatively new member, I think you've got time to draw into this and draw on the information that's available. But from as long as I can remember, the main reason for not providing an alternative budget in its entirety has been a failure to access information. Now, you heard Councillor Foreman there say that we start on the new budget for next year tomorrow. You know, so I really struggle with how it takes a year of requesting information and not getting it, and therefore not being able to put up, you know, an alternative budget in its entirety. And I think going back to what Councillor Carter says, and it is all point of information really relating, Councillor Davies, to what you've said, is that it is one amendment with 4 components. And I would really like to see further, you know, kind of understanding and financial acumen with regards to the issues that have been raised, but with no solution.
Thank you, Councillor.
Could I raise my point of information now, please, Madam Mayor?
Councillor, I'm going to move on now.
It's a point of information on what the councillor said.
A point of information
Yes.
what Councillor Kilgour
Yes.
has just said.
What she's just said and what she said
Your
previously.
point of information is exactly the same. Right, you first, Councillor Kennedy.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to reiterate, from the other side of the room, we seem to be trying to cloud the issue here. Now, we haven't said that it doesn't matter how you dress this up. 4 amendments or 4 points to 1 amendment, doesn't matter. It is an amendment at the end of the day. But going back to what you said about Amendment 1, whereby you've stated that it's self-funding. The reason we've said it's self-funding is because if we can cut antisocial behaviour in this borough, that is a cost saving across the board. I think I made myself quite clear when I mentioned £100,000 on graffiti alone. And yes, we wouldn't stop £100,000 on graffiti alone, but we take it from the other things like fly tipping and other, you know, the other antisocial behaviour elements where we're having to deploy people. If there's a deterrent there, we can limit what antisocial behaviour goes on, and in that we will make a saving. Yes, we get another couple of officers in, and then maybe we can start prosecuting people and making some revenue from that. But the main crux of the matter is at the moment that it will self-fund through the savings that can be made by obliterating some of the antisocial behaviour that we have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Brennan. This
Just
is
a
your point of
but
information.
Just on what Councillor Kilgour said, we have similar access to officers. Now, I know West Ward councillors have asked an officer for information on a road scheme on Sunderland Road, which a number of us, I think Councillor Gibson's been CC'd into. Now, this goes out to consultation tomorrow, right? And we've objected because we haven't received that information off the officers. So we don't get the same information as you, the ruling group. And maybe Councillor Gibson can confirm, is that going out to consultation?
Councillor, this is not a point of information. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have one, please, a point of
Councillor.
information.
Right, Councillor Owens-Palmer, can I ask you as seconder?
Madam Mayor, I have a point of information as well, please.
Madam Mayor, I have a point of information.
Yes, can I just reiterate what a point of information is, because I think we're getting lost off here. Right, when giving a point of information, a member must briefly give information to correct an alleged inaccuracy in a speech about the matter. It can clarify matters or question the facts and ask for a source. When making a point of information, members must wait for the relevant speech being concluded first, Rule 12(1)(3). So please, I think now we are going to move on, and I'm going to allow the seconder. Oh, sorry, Councillor Francis. I didn't know you had your hand.
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam Mayor.
Davies, you've already spoken.
Madam Mayor, as a point of information, I've not spoken on the amendment.
You've already given a point of information.
I've not spoken on the amendment, though.
Suggests that he hasn't spoken and he's only given points of information.
Right.
It's up to you who you want to bring in.
Right, no. I'll allow Councillor Francis to speak, then yourself, and then I will ask Councillor who has seconded it, and then Councillor Kennedy, you will have your closing remarks before we put the amendment. Is everyone clear about that? Thank you. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to thank the South Tyneside Alliance Group for bringing forward this amendment this evening. I acknowledge the difficulty of the task that they've had to do that. And with respect to Councillor Kilgour, she doesn't know what it's like to be in our position. So yet, that may happen in the fullness of time. And certainly when we were the main opposition group, we were trying to start this process almost as soon as the previous year's budget had been set. And it was a very difficult process to get the information, to get access to the information that we needed. In regard to the point about training, yes, opposition members have access training internally within the council about local government finance through the Local Government Association, through the Association of Green Councillors. So it's not correct to insinuate that we have access to the information, and it's not correct to insinuate that we don't have the training required, or we haven't taken up the training offers required. And certainly the Cabinet, when they're forming the budget, aren't doing it by submitting FOIs to get the information that they need. I agree with the intention behind this amendment, the outcomes being sought, and certainly last year when we put forward budget amendments, we were trying to tackle some of the same things: antisocial behaviour, street cleaning. So definitely agree with the intention there. I would like to minor correction to something Councillor Kennedy said about the independents being the only people pressuring for the business and community response team or a return of community wardens. The very first meeting where I stood up and spoke in 2019, I mentioned the exact same thing. And I'm really glad that we've got that resource now, and it's proved very effective. I do worry about the sustainability of those posts if it's going to be funded through fines, because by definition then, you know, you've got people whose jobs are dependent on punitive measures. And so I do worry about that a little bit.
Councillor Francis, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. To come back to Councillor Carter about council allowances, and yes, there's an independent body that looks at that, but the decision comes to full council. So we have the authority to say yes or no to that. So yeah, in winding up, I agree with the intention of the amendment. I think it's trying to do some of the same things we were seeking to do last year. And I agree that it's been very challenging in my own personal experience to get the information needed to put together a full opposition budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What this budget amendment is trying to do, absolutely, as Councillor Francis and others have done, is seek to establish some equity and some fairness. What I would challenge, though, albeit in favour of this, is that we are balancing our own allowances, and not all councillors are in equal circumstance. Councillors enter this in all sorts of circumstances, and it may well be their first money of the year when they are elected. They're not paying any tax in that regard. They may well be in receipt of benefits and then go to the job centre and, you know, sit down and say, this is not a salary, this is not going to lead to a benefit sanction. They are then still sanctioned, and then they have to claim it back. That is the reality of councillors entering this place across the country. And so the alternative would be to balance this on the back of special responsibility allowance, something blocked through Constitution this year, cutting the posts from 31 to the standard of at least 27, and the money could have been found from special responsibility allowances. On school milk, it is an elective choice for parents to go into it. I have lactose intolerant children, and that would be something that I would not be taking up when they enter primary school. And in addition to that, this is milk that sits on the side and it ends up not being very attractive. The amount of primary schools I went into as a music teacher and the wastage that was in each and every classroom with children not having their milk was really disappointing. And, albeit the scheme, the national scheme, has a lot of positives about it, it is only cow milk that is available through this scheme, and there is significant wastage. But lastly, on street scene. In the impact assessment on weed cutting, it talks of the negative impact to both disability and age, and I would really draw those across into the impacts of cutting street scene investment. Older people and those with children in pushchairs may benefit from more open, accessible entrances and exits, unobstructed paths through litter.
Councillor, 1 minute, please.
Uneven, inaccessible pathways and particular barrier to older users. And disability, again, a negative for being in a wheelchair. I welcome the inclusion of these impact assessments in the budget and items that come to this council. And again, on fair access to information, these equality impact assessments were not available to the public record when this came to Cabinet at the beginning of the month. And again, this impact assessment would have been much greatly appreciated through the ONS draft budget setting process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Owens-Palmer, you have 3 minutes as seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given that we have a Labour government in power at present, and Councillor Carter's noting of the catastrophic funding costs of over 100 million in recent years to South Tyneside Council's budget, I would hope very much that our Labour colleagues and our 2 Labour MPs will be pushing their government to redress the balance and increase funding to South Tyneside Council accordingly. But until then, our amendments, as we set out, should not have a negative impact on our residents. And the reality is that this amendment does not affect the budget put forward by Councillor Carter. The first one, to develop and expand the business and community response team. This is a fantastic service, which has made a real difference to safety in our borough. There was a concern that the service wouldn't be able to continue for some time, and we're delighted that it is. Councillor Kennedy's amendment would expand the service, providing 2 additional staff, additional vehicle and staff equipment. As a council, we have a legislative responsibility to ensure that everything possible is done to reduce antisocial behaviour and make South Tyneside a safer place. And I believe, although I can't confirm this here now, I don't have that information, that there is an ongoing prosecution at the moment, Councillor Kilgour, and hopefully that will also make things better going forward if we get something positive out of it, and that will be a money saver. The amendment proposes using just a small percentage of CAF funding to do this. What better way to use community area forum money to then expand our response team? If 5k from each of the 18 wards is redirected in this way, the 90,000 raised would fully fund it. And in future, perhaps the CAF contribution could be ameliorated by proper enforcement of dog fouling, litter, fly tipping. That revenue from such enforcement could be logged for the purpose of reinstating the CAF money. We believe that this is a cross-party amendment which all councillors should see as a positive way of developing this excellent resource. The cost of school meals, it's being gone into. Our children are living in one of the poorest authorities in the region and in the country. This amendment would reduce the impact on families of the proposed rise. Yes, there are children who qualify for free meals, but a large number living in South Tyneside whose families have an income only slightly over the meagre threshold for free meals.
Councillor, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. To these families, even a small increase can impact their ability to feed and clothe the youngsters who are in the future of our borough. we're letting them down. The same goes for the free school milk. Yes, some goes to waste, but for some children, that actually small amount of milk gives them some of the protein, some of the life-giving properties that they get. They don't get much to eat or drink at home that is healthy. We suggest that we, as councillors, should play our part in this. We should give up our increase in the allowance and put that towards it. I think that's only right. I really do. If we remove the allowances this year, the savings of 25,000 would be put forward to feeding the children.
Councillor, can you wind up now, please?
Indeed, I will. The vacancy management service, with the only information we have on that, comes from the same source, I assume, as the other side of the chamber. So I hope that that we've been given the right information by the F151 officer. All of these amendments will benefit the residents of Tyneside. They'll make it a cleaner, safer, healthier place to live. I haven't been able to mention the uplift in road keeping, but Councillor Davies mentioned that. And I urge you all, on all sides, to vote for this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kennedy, you now have a right of reply before we take the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think what Councillor Owens-Palmer has just said basically says it all. The motion that the Labour Party have presented tonight isn't affected in any way by what we have done. What we are proposing is a minor enhancement to make it better for the residents of our borough who suffer most. Now, I've got no doubt, having been in these council chambers on many, many times, that you'll have been whipped to reject this amendment because it's come from the opposition. But I would implore you to do the right thing tonight and look back to the last full council when some of you actually did have the backbone to stand up to the whip and go against the wishes of the party. This is not something that's going to benefit you in the long term. It's something that's going to benefit our residents. And for the sake of our residents, I think that you should all stand up and look to why you are sitting in those seats. The people that elected you, put you there. They don't expect you to be whipped. They expect you to have a voice of your own. And I think it's important tonight that you show this and back this amendment because it is worthy of being accepted. And like I've said, it does not detract from the budget that you've already put. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Colleagues, legislation requires that a name vote be taken on certain decisions relating to the setting of the budget. I will therefore ask our monitoring officer to conduct a recorded vote on the amendment to the medium-term financial plan 2025-2030. Councillor Mrs. Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Elected members, I'll read each of your names alphabetically, and if you could just indicate clearly saying only for, against, or abstain, turn your microphone on. This is one amendment, so it's in its entirety. You're either for it, against it, or abstaining. Councillor Barclay?
Against.
Councillor Brennan?
For.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Carter?
Against.
Councillor Clare?
Against.
Councillor Coombs?
For.
Councillor Davies?
For.
Councillor Dawes?
Against.
Councillor Paydean?
Against.
Councillor Esteen? Councillor Dixon?
Against.
Councillor Foggin?
For.
Councillor Ford?
For.
Councillor Foreman? Councillor Francis?
For.
Councillor Gibson? Councillor Guy?
For.
Councillor Ginn?
For.
Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Harrison?
For.
Councillor Herbert?
For.
Councillor Keegan?
Against.
Councillor Kennedy?
For.
Councillor Kilgour?
Against.
Councillor Lamont?
Against.
Councillor Lamont? Councillor K. Maxwell?
Against.
Councillor N. Maxwell?
Against.
Councillor McCabe?
Against.
Councillor McHugh?
Against.
Councillor Mellon?
Against.
Councillor Myers?
For.
Councillor Oliver?
For.
Councillor Owens-Palmer,
For.
Councillor Porthouse,
Against.
Councillor Potts,
Against.
Councillor K Roberts,
For.
Councillor T Roberts,
For.
Councillor Robertson,
For.
Councillor Smith,
Against.
Councillor Strike,
Against.
Councillor J Taylor, Councillor Thompson,
For.
Councillor Traynor,
Against.
Councillor Welsh,
Against.
Councillor Yeh.
For.
The amendment fails. There was 21 votes for and 24 against.
Right.
So it's
this one.
this one.
Yes. Colleagues, the amendment has not been carried. It is 21 for and 24 against. Therefore, the proposed budget and recommendations as presented by Councillor Carter remain unchanged. Before asking the leader to close the debate, I will invite Councillor Carter to reply to the debate on the budget recommendations. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll be brief because I know we've had a long day. I think there were a few questions which were raised, but not many. It was mainly statements which were given. But if anyone does have any questions at all, please just drop me an email and I will reply. I promise I will reply. Thank you. Just basically on what Councillor Brennan said at first about weakening frontline services. We're not weakening frontline services. We're actually maintaining the services. We're not cutting them. Thank you, but maintaining them. And we're looking to improve the services by a range of transformation processes, especially in adult social care, around the use of new technology at home visits and that sort of thing. So that should be generating a saving in the future. Councillor Hamilton mentioned about the cost of residential care is worse or the same as if it is providing care in the house, in the home. That's not true because the cost of residential care is astronomical. We have no control over that cost because of the companies who provide it. Next one was Councillor Davis mentioned about the e-bikes. I don't know, but sorry, if I can just finish my point. I'm not too sure where you were coming from that, but if you want to have a discussion about that, I'm quite willing with my colleague, Councillor Gibson. No, thank you.
It was EVs as mentioned as part of active travel.
Councillor Ginn mentioned about family hubs. That family hubs is currently under review and there has been no decisions made, and it's not necessarily about cutting the provision, it's about finding a more cost-effective way of providing that. Councillor Herbert, I think you got an answer to your question about CO2 emissions from Councillor Gibson. And I'd just like to finalise and say there is no black hole. There is no black hole in the finances, and we've had to take some really difficult decisions in coming up with a balanced and fair budget. We always seem to get round to talking about debt. Debt seems to be the in word for everybody, well, on the opposition, and the debt we have is sustainable and affordable. And you can laugh all you want if you want to, but the strategy...
Councillor Roberts, please. Councillor
Roberts.
You'd had
yes, sir, Councillor Roberts. I thought you'd had yes, sir, Councillor Roberts.
Councillor Roberts.
Would you let me have mine, please? Thank you.
Councillor Roberts, please. Let Councillor Carter finish.
Just to finish, the strategy, and I've got this written down so I didn't forget it, to try and push down our debt in a measured way will take some time. I don't appreciate being laughed at, actually.
Councillor Roberts.
You're looking at me. Our value of debt is not going up. We looked at the impact of reducing debt significantly by 25% of capital programme. You would be taking a large part of that 25%, which would directly impact spending, example, on highways, vehicles and the electric fleet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. As is custom and practice, I will now ask the Leader of the Council to close the debate. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will again try and be brief because it has been a very long day. I just want to make just one comment where a member has said this Labour group has no plan and no imagination. If you look in this report, there is a capital programme of investment for 25 to 2030. We also have a rolling programme of 10 years with regard to road resurfacing. We've talked about fleet renewal. We've talked about investment that we're going to be doing with Mortimer Community College and expansion. We've invested in our playgrounds to make sure that they're accessible for all children, with even including those with disabilities. With regard to imagination, we have the first of its kind, the Viking Energy Network in Jarrow. We've got the Paul Younger Centre in Hebburn. We've got the Word, which has got national recognition. We had an innovative scheme with regard to bringing our residents out of hospital discharge, where we have Borough House supporting our residents coming out of hospital. We've got some fantastic children's homes coming on site very soon. We've got extra care facilities that's going to help our vulnerable. We've got Hindmarsh Drive, which has already been touched upon, which is an innovative way of using technology in our homes, and hopefully that will be rolling out with new sites coming on board. So to say this Labour group has no imagination and no plan, I think that is unnecessary. So, Madam Mayor, firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Carter and all members of the Cabinet for their efforts in pulling this budget together, ably supported by our fantastic council officers. This has required lots of discussion to get to this point this evening. Our strategic planning and deliveries continues to be framed around our delivery on our 5 core ambitions set out in the 3-year council plan, which themselves were shaped through extensive consultation and engagement. Managing our finances well is an important responsibility, particularly given the ongoing challenges where we simply cannot afford to do everything that we would like to do in our borough and for our residents. This means choices and trade-offs. We will continue to be prudent and make the brave but necessary decisions so that we can remain financially sustainable, over the medium and long term. This new government inherited a financial mess from the last government with the black hole discovered in the finances. There has been some tentative signs from the government currently through the most recent local government settlement that the council that are in need, and we're hoping that South Tyneside are at the beginning of being recognised, but we will continue to lobby tirelessly for a fair financial settlement.
Councillor, you have 1 minute.
All right, I'll be quick. Madam Mayor, we are still delivering our library services. We have fantastic leisure facilities, and as I've already mentioned, our fantastic assets, also including Haven Point, Hebburn Hub and Jarrow Focus. Meeting our statutory requirements, especially around social care, requires more and more resources. We are prioritising investment in the longer term by delivering our new accommodation to support vulnerable residents of all ages, promoting independence and, where possible, avoiding crisis. Our budget for the coming year is evidence-led and responds to the issues being experienced by our residents. Please indulge me for just 1 minute. For example, we are continuing to work locally and regionally with a number of our projects to combat the real poverty faced by many of our residents. These include using external funding to support our community shops, welcoming places, and match core funding, continuing to maximum the income of residents through targeted campaigns, encouraging benefit take-up. Madam Mayor, we're looking to invest in various parts of our borough, Hebburn, Jarrow and South Shields, and working with our combined authority. Finally, our budget has responded to the needs of our residents, from a £5 million capital investment in active travel schemes, which reduces carbon emissions, investment in our healthy homes teams, as well as continuing to upgrade our play facilities so that they are safe and accessible. Our budget ensures that everyone in South Tyneside is being supported by the council, regardless of circumstances. I look forward, Madam Mayor, with confidence to the year ahead as we strive towards in meeting our overriding ambitions for the borough to be a place where people live healthy, happy and fulfilled lives, and recommend the budget for approval. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. As I mentioned earlier, colleagues, legislation requires that a name vote be taken on certain decisions relating to the setting up of a budget. I will therefore ask the monitoring officer to conduct a recorded vote to agree the medium-term financial plan 2025-2030 and in respect of recommendations B and C. Colleagues, can I just remind you that you are now voting on the substantive motion which was presented by Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, members, the first question, and I'll read each of your names alphabetically again, and if you could just please indicate clearly using the microphones, saying for, against or abstaining. And the first question is, Council is asked to agree the medium-term financial plan 2025 to 2030. Councillor Barclay?
For.
Councillor Brennan?
Abstain.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Carter? For. Councillor Clare?
For.
Councillor Coombs?
Abstain.
Councillor Davies?
Against.
Councillor Dawes?
For.
Councillor P. Dean?
For.
Councillor Esteen?
For.
Councillor Dixon?
For.
Councillor Fogan's gone. Councillor Ford?
Abstain.
Councillor Foreman? For. Councillor Francis?
Abstain.
Councillor Gibson? Councillor Guy?
Against.
Councillor Ginn?
Abstain.
Councillor Hamilton?
Against.
Councillor Harrison?
Against.
Councillor Herbert?
Abstain.
Councillor Keegan?
For.
Councillor Kennedy?
Against.
Councillor Kilgour?
For.
Councillor Lamont?
For.
Councillor K. Maxwell?
For.
Councillor N. Maxwell?
For.
Councillor McCabe?
For.
Councillor McHugh?
For.
Councillor Melling?
For.
Councillor Myers?
Against.
Councillor Oliver?
Abstain.
Councillor Owens-Palmer?
Abstain.
Councillor Porthouse?
For.
Councillor Potts?
For.
Councillor Roberts gone. Councillor P. Roberts?
Against.
Councillor Robertson's gone. Councillor Smith?
For.
Councillor Strike?
For.
Councillor J. Taylor? Councillor Thompson?
Abstain.
Councillor Traynor?
For.
Councillor Welsh?
For.
Councillor Yeh?
Against.
Against, sorry, Councillor Yeh. The meeting, that's what I meant. I said that in my notes. The medium-term financial plan is passed with 25 votes for, 8 against, and 9 abstentions.
So thank you, colleagues. If I can tell you that the motion has been agreed by 25 votes, 8 against and 9 abstentions. So the medium-term financial plan 2025-2030 is agreed by the numbers that I have just read out. The Director of Business and Resources, in consultation with the Leader of the Council. Oh, right, okay. So we now...
So you have to have a recorded vote, as the Mayor said at the beginning, on questions A, B and C. So I'll move on to B and then the Mayor will announce that and then we'll do C and then will be through that part of the agenda. So this time, members, and it's the same process, council's asked to authorise the Director of Business and Resources in consultation with the Leader of the Council to amend the budget recommendations to reflect any changes arising should the actual Fire and Civil Defence Authority and Police and Crime Commissioner precepts differ from the estimates included in the report. Councillor Barclay.
Agree.
Councillor Brennan.
Abstain.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Carter. For. Councillor Clare.
For.
Councillor Coombs.
Abstain.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Dawes.
For.
Councillor Paydean.
For.
Councillor Estein.
For.
Councillor Dixon. For. Councillor Ford.
For.
Councillor Foreman. Councillor Francis.
Abstain.
Councillor Gibson. Councillor Guy.
Abstain.
Councillor Ginn.
For.
Councillor Hamilton.
Abstain.
Councillor Harrison.
Against.
Councillor Herbert.
For.
Councillor Keegan.
For.
Councillor Kennedy.
Abstain.
Councillor Kilgour.
For.
Councillor Lamont.
For.
Councillor K. Maxwell.
For.
Councillor N. Maxwell.
For.
Councillor McCabe.
For.
Councillor McHugh.
For.
Councillor Mellon.
For.
Councillor Myers.
Against.
Councillor Oliver.
Abstain.
Councillor Owens Palmer.
Abstain.
Councillor Porthouse.
For.
Councillor Potts.
For.
Councillor T. Roberts. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Strike.
For.
Councillor J. Taylor. Councillor Thompson.
Abstain.
Councillor Traynor.
For.
Councillor Welsh.
For.
Councillor Yeh.
Abstain.
So that
Item B.
B
Mhm.
has been agreed with 29 votes in favour, 2 against and 11 abstentions.
Colleagues, I can tell you that item B has been agreed, 29 for, 2 against and 11 abstentions. We will now take part C.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, members, this one is to authorise the Director of Business and Resources in consultation with the Leader of the Council to amend individual budget lines shown in Appendix 1 of the medium-term financial plan and school budgets to take into account the allocation of budgets currently held centrally or any changes to funding following the formal acceptance by Parliament of the local government finance settlement. So, again, I'll read each of your names alphabetically, for, against or abstention. Councillor Barclay.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
Abstain.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Carter. For. Councillor Clare.
For.
Councillor Coombs.
Abstain.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Dawes.
For.
Councillor Paydean.
For.
Councillor Estein.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Ford.
For.
Councillor Foreman. Councillor Francis.
For.
Councillor Gibson. Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Ginn.
For.
Councillor Hamilton.
Abstain.
Councillor Harrison.
Against.
Councillor Herbert.
For.
Councillor Keegan.
For.
Councillor Kennedy.
Abstain.
Councillor Kilgour.
For.
Councillor Lamont.
For.
Councillor K. Maxwell.
For.
Councillor N. Maxwell.
For.
Councillor McCabe.
For.
Councillor McHugh.
For.
Councillor Melling.
For.
Councillor Myers. Councillor Oliver.
Abstain.
Councillor Owens Palmer.
For.
Councillor Porthouse.
For.
Councillor Potts.
For.
Councillor T. Roberts.
Abstain.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Strike.
For.
Councillor J. Taylor. Councillor Thompson,
Abstain.
Councillor Traynor,
For.
Councillor Welsh,
For.
Councillor Yeh.
Oh,
C has passed with 33 votes in favour, 2 against and 7 abstentions.
Colleagues, Part C has been agreed. 33 for, 2 against and 7 abstentions. Colleagues, there are a number of other matters that the council is asked to agree that do not require a name vote. So recommendations D to K. Members will be asked whether they agree in turn. Only if I hear any dissenting voice by any member wishing to disagree or abstain will a vote be taken just by show of hands. I will therefore work through these in turn. So, recommendation D. Does Council agree the Capital and Investment Strategy 2025 to 30? Is that agreed? Thank you, colleagues. Recommendation E. Does Council agree the minimum revenue provision policy statement for 2025 to 30? Is that agreed? Agreed. Recommendation F. Does Council agree the Treasury Management Strategy 2025-26? Is that agreed? Thank you, colleagues. Recommendation G. Does Council agree to adopt the 2021 CIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management in the Public Service and the Treasury Management Policy Statement? Is that agreed, colleagues? Thank you. Recommendation H. Does Council agree the Pay Policy Statement for South Tyneside Council? Is that agreed? Thank you, colleagues. Recommendation I. Does Council agree the Rent Setting Policy 2025? Is that agreed? Thank you, colleagues. Recommendation J. Does Council agree that with effect from the 1st of April 2025, the authority will implement a second home premium of 100% of the council tax payable? Is that agreed? Thank you, colleagues. Finally, colleagues, recommendation K. Does Council agree that the Director of Business and Resources be given delegated authority to determine if any exemption from the second home premium should apply to a particular property as considered appropriate, and that this delegation be included in the officer delegation scheme which forms part of the authority's constitution? Is that agreed, colleagues? Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is to receive questions under Procedure Rule 8. We have received no questions in relation to budget setting for Council under Procedure Rule 8 for our meeting today. The next item of business is to deal with petitions received under Council Procedure Rule 9. We have not received any petitions in relation to budget setting under Council Procedure Rule 9 for our meeting today. There were no petitions, colleagues, presented to the meeting of Borough Council on the 23rd of January to update you upon. The next item of business is to receive motions. Under Council Procedure Rule 10, there are no motions in relation to budget setting to be considered under Rule 10 at our meeting today. Thank you, colleagues. That concludes the business of Council today. May I thank everyone, including those in the public gallery and watching from home, for their attendance this evening. And thank you, colleagues. It has been a long day, but I think we have come to a lot